Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the session of Vihangam Yog Global Online Satsang. I have the honor of introducing Abhinav Kishore ji, who is a project lead and a software engineer based in Sydney. He's passionate about history, philosophy, design, and most prominently spirituality. And from the little that we've interacted together, I've seen that he has a very systems-based approach, a very cause and effect-based approach that I admire greatly on virtually most of the things that we've discussed. So we shall be looking forward to his presentation or his speech this morning, afternoon, or evening. We shall start shortly, and the topic for the day is scaling yourself, becoming an agent of change. As people in the corporate world, we always face this. It comes up as change management. The more you change, the more things remain the same. We should all change. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Be the change you want to see in others." But change is something that sounds easy but is difficult to implement. On a personal basis, when you change from one habit to another, and also on an organizational or a societal basis or an institutional basis, even from a family basis, change is inevitable, and we must prepare and be ready as agents of change. But how do we invoke change? That is the subject of discussion for today. May I now invite Abhinav Kishore ji, our engineer friend from Australia, to please tell us more about his own experiences and what he perceives. How do we handle change? How do we become agents of change? And how do we scale ourselves? Because no matter how much we speak about it, change is difficult. Transitions are difficult. Remember, at every stage of life, when we are faced with great change, whether it's being born or entering a particular stage of life, getting married, we receive the blessings and the support and the endorsement of our loved ones who come together and endorse that movement. They give us the confidence that you are about to step into a new life, a new way of thinking and living. So we have these ceremonies and we have these get-togethers where we empower ourselves through these social functions. But how do we handle change on a daily basis? How do we handle it in our organizations? How do we make sure that our children who move from one grade to another or from one level of difficulty in some form of subject, maths, English, the sciences, history, whatever, as we move from one level of difficulty to another, we are faced with the same question. How do we scale ourselves and how do we become an agent of change? Over to you, Abhinav Kishore ji.
Thank you very much, Raghav ji, and thank you to the entire platform for having me today. The process of change is one which is deeply personal and yet deeply shared. You know, if I look at my own life, there's so many things which, even as I speak to you right now, I know I want to change about myself. I know, you know, that I know I have this definition in my own perspective of what the ideal life is. And when I look at my current life, I know there's a difference between those two. And really, the process of change begins when you realize this. You know, it starts with you. You realize that I have a definition of the ideal life. You know, if I give you a piece of paper and I say, you know, let's just look at this empty piece of paper, and I'll give you a pen and you can write down what is the ideal life. And when I go through this exercise, I find myself writing down so many things, you know, and I want to write these things down because I know that they're the right thing to do for me. Perhaps you want to wake up earlier. Perhaps you want to exercise more. Perhaps you want to eat more mindfully. Perhaps you want to learn new things every day. Perhaps you want to develop new habits, reading, writing, meditating, speaking. You know, you ask yourself, if I know what my ideal life is, why is my current life not in alignment with that? And once we form this thought, the process of change begins. You know, we change and challenge go hand in hand. To scale yourself, you have to challenge yourself. And once we start to challenge ourselves within, we begin the process of changing our outward behaviors. So the process of change begins within. It is when we challenge ourselves within to be different to the way we are right now. And this delta, as it's called in engineering, this diff, is where change operates. And when we begin this journey, when we embark this journey, you know, perhaps you want to develop a habit of reading every night. But one night you'll find that, you know, perhaps you're occupied with something else. Perhaps, you know, your workplace, or you've got an assignment or a project or something comes up and you have to take a decision. You know, do I skip today or do I not? And I can give you so many examples of times when I've wanted to form a habit, and when I've been put in a difficult situation like that, I found it very difficult to figure out what I should do. And sometimes unconsciously I decide, oh, let me just do it tomorrow, or let me just do it the day after. And this, you know, loss of consistency, this loss of discipline is what causes us difficulty in forming these new habits or in invoking change within ourselves. You know, as we heard, the master of Vihangam Yoga, Sadhguru Sadafal Leji Maharaj, very, you know, simply puts it to us that the source of change and the source of no change is the same. It is the mind. The mind is what is forming barriers in front of our ideal definition of life. And if we can control this mind, and if we can control the energy which this mind is utilizing, if we can become masters of that own energy, then the process of change no longer belongs to the mind, it belongs to us. And this empowering state is when we start to realize that life is as simple or as complicated as we make it. You know, with this superpower in hand, where we can direct our own energy, where we can direct what the yogis tell us is our surati, the energy which emanates from the soul and is then scattered by the mind. If we can take this energy and we can really master it, you know, if I get up today and I say, today I'm going to work on cleaning up my house. So then if that's my decision, that means 100% of my energy should be going into that and that only. So that level of granularity is different to saying, I want to spend an hour. It's different to saying, I want to try to do this. It is so very complete, because everything we do, our words, our thoughts, our actions, are backed by this same energy. If we can master the energy itself, then everything else as a side effect becomes controlled, becomes aligned. So it all begins with ourself. We try to understand our own energy. We try to understand how to control the mind, and we discover our potential, which is limitless. And then as we proceed on this path, as we begin to scale parts of ourselves, we have to remember that until we have, through the guidance of a master, really mastered this energy, the moment we think that I've made it, the moment we think I've done it, we need to begin another process of change, which is the process of becoming a bit more humble in what we have achieved. Because at the end of the day, yes, the process of change should be one which makes us proud and empowers us. But if we become too overly conceited, too overly confident in this process itself, then we lose sight of our own energy, and we lose sight of how to control our energy, because this state of control is very subtle. And in order to remain subtle, we must remain humble. Otherwise, that energy becomes scattered once again. So it all begins with us. We try to understand ourselves and grow ourselves. And as we begin to understand ourselves, we start to realize that we're becoming more receptive to others' energy. We start to notice what it's like, what it really feels like, what that state of consciousness is when a person is trying to introduce change into their life, but they're not able to. I have a very dear friend, and we discussed this topic furiously because we're both at a stage in our lives where we're looking to improve ourselves. We're looking to grow ourselves into certain kinds of people. And we have always debate this all the time. You said the other time that you want to get up early. Why are you not doing that? And then he might say to me, you said that, you want to exercise every day. Why are you only doing it every 2 days? And this constant process of debating and doing satsang, in a sense, where we're trying to seek the truth about the process of change, about our own self, is what guides us. When we are speaking about scaling ourselves beyond changing ourselves and introducing change into others' life as well. So once there is an awareness within yourself of how the process of change begins, what roadblocks there can be, where it ends, if there is an end in a particular way, then we begin to develop a shared awareness of what that obstacle is like in others' worlds. And once we begin to develop this, once this awareness, starts to crop up within us, a certain kindness overflows within our behavior, a certain compassion, a certain empathy presents itself. And I want to really stress that these words come after the experience. They describe the experience. They are not the experience. Language is just a means to convey a state of existence. So we cannot, when people say to you, oh, hey, you seem so empathetic to me. You seem so sympathetic to my situations. You have reached that state of consciousness. You are not that word. You are that state of consciousness. And the reason I'm stressing this is because the yogis, the masters, the master of Vihangam Yoga himself has told us experience is the key. And that is what we start to exchange. We start to exchange the currency. We start to exchange the language of experience. And that is why sometimes when you meet people and they speak to you, but maybe they don't have as much experience with that part of your life. No matter how much they say, No matter how much you like it in the moment, you'll enjoy it. Maybe you'll even take something away. But then if you talk to a person who has experienced those things, they may say one sentence and it sticks with you for the rest of your life, because they are speaking from a perspective where you are right now. So this is why in the yogic philosophy, in the Vedic philosophy, in the philosophy of Vihangam Yoga, there is a master. We cannot do everything based off just our own experiences. We have to exchange those experiences with someone who has a greater understanding. And in our own lives, we see this in the form of family, in the form of friendships. And these people too are guides in our lives, because they are giving us, exchanging with us information, experiences, states of being, which we are maybe grappling with right now. So we begin with change within ourselves. We then form a greater understanding of others. And this evokes an opportunity to assist others in aligning their energy with the life they want to lead. And these 3 steps are very organic. If you look back to maybe a good habit that you formed in your own life, you will notice that once you saw the impact of that habit, immediately you started talking about it. Maybe it was just to your family, maybe it was just to your younger brother, younger sister, a friend. But you started talking about it. Hey, I started sleeping earlier and getting up earlier, and I feel so much better. So this state of helping others, of being a team, of growing and evolving with each other is very organic to the human experience. And you'll notice it within yourself. Once one of the somewhat positive things about social media is that it allows us to share a lot more content. But why do we share content? We share content because we want to share an experience. That is why social media is viral. That is why we see certain things and we feel something inside of us and we want to exchange that with someone else. And when this process becomes selfless, when it becomes sourced and rooted in compassion, where we only want the best for the other, even if it's tough love, even if it's soft, when that becomes our only goal, we become an agent of change. We become what the yogis tell us is a sevak, a person whose only goal in life is to look at the energy in the universe around them and figure out, how can I maximize the positivity, the goodness in this environment, whether that be to my detriment or not. And if we look at the world today, why is this so important? If we look at different parts of the world, there are continued battles over invisible lines in the soil. There are species which will never exist again. There are trillions of dollars circulating in the world, yet millions don't even have a dollar. We know these things. We see these things. But the fact of the matter is, we cannot change the world on our own. We begin by scaling ourselves. We then allow and assist others in scaling themselves. But then as a humanity, we come together and we reevaluate where we are as a species. And this is when the scaling process really reaps its benefits. When we scale our philosophy, our concept, our process of change to the entire world. And if we look at the masters of old, each and every one of them have embarked upon a process, a path a journey in which they have tried, assisted, guided the entire world to wake up and look at where we are and where we are going. And so the process of change is one which begins in your own household, in your own room, on that bus ride home, when you're thinking, what do I want to be? And what am I right now? We then look at the person next to us. Perhaps they're grappling with the same thing. We start to talk to each other. We start to exchange experiences. And then as we start to ripple this, our words, thoughts, and actions, as they ripple to inspire others, ripples form in the world. And these invisible lines which we draw in the soil no longer exist. The only borders which exist are those which we place in our mind, in our heart. The yogis, the masters of Vihangam Yoga, have told us we are limitless, we are boundless. So why do we limit ourselves to such mundane things? And so, with the guidance of each other and with the ultimate guidance of a master, we can develop cultures, societies, ways of looking at the world which are infused with an understanding of the greater good and of our individual and collective potential. Let's become that change which we seek and which the world is after. That's all I have to share today. Jasudev, and back to you, Raghavji.
Thank you, Abhinavji. As always, you've taken us on a tour de force of a very complex topic, change, becoming an agent of change and scaling ourselves. Dear listeners, please do log into Slido and post your questions, and we shall take them up. And if we don't have time today, we shall take them up in the next session. The URL is www.sli.do. Please do post your questions for this session. May we begin with questions from the last session, one of which was probably unanswered, and we felt that this needs to be taken up this time. The question goes, I was a good meditator when I was a child, but when I left meditation, things became bad and even worse. If I start meditating again, can I be that person again? That's interesting. Here, a little bit of change, a little bit of leaving the path that you were following has led to things becoming bad and worse. So Abhinavji, may I call upon you to answer this question? That when I left meditation, things became bad and worse. And if I start meditating again as I did as a child, can I be that person again? Over to you, Abhinavji.
Yeah, thank you, Raghavji. So it's a great question. What I would say is definitely yes. Like, you can become that person again. You can probably even become an even more refined version of yourself. And as far as, my reflection on this question would be, keep it simple. If you ask a child why they do certain things, they have very simple answers. They don't overcomplicate it. It's only as we get older and we are exposed to more of the world, more perspectives, we have different things we want to do with our time, that we overcomplicate our reasoning and our way of looking at things. If I was to ask you instead, do you still brush your teeth? You brushed your teeth as a child. Do you still brush your teeth? Most likely you would say, I do. And that's because you have a simple reason. I'm cleaning my teeth, and meditation, you can keep it as simple as I'm cleaning up what I call my mental laundry. I have things building up inside me that I'm probably not aware of. There's probably things that I'm unconscious of, which are dragging me back. Let me go in there and clean up. So the master of Vihangam Yoga guides us and says, meditate once in the morning and evening. So for me, I meditate once in the morning. After brushing my teeth, doing a bit of yoga, I meditate, and before I go to sleep. And I don't look at it as anything more than just spending some time cleaning up myself, because I want to give my best to the world. I want to give my best to the people around me. So that would be my only kind of response, I guess, to this question. And I really do hope you're able to pick that habit up again, because, for me personally, I've seen the effect it's had on me and the people around me. So I'd really love to know how you go with that. Please do write in again. Thanks, Raghavji. I'll hand it back to you for the next one.
Thank you, Abhinavji. The next question is, how much time will it take to see a change in ourselves? Why do we get jealous of something? Does Vihangam Yoga help in preventing jealousy? So there are two parts to this question. One is about jealousy. The important one in terms of the topic today is, how much time will it take to see a change in ourselves? May I request you to take that up, please, Abhinavji?
Sure. Well, thank you, Priyaji, for that question. It's a fantastic question. So for the first part, how much time will it take to see a change? I think, at least speaking personally, like when I get up from meditating, I immediately feel a lot more sharp, a lot more focused. And then after that, if I try and do something, I feel much more empowered to do that thing. So I would say it's quite fast. I think also it's very subtle. So if you were to ask a child who has now become a teenager, who's now become an adult, when did you grow taller? Like, can you actually locate when you got taller? Then they probably won't be able to say, this specific day I grew 2 centimeters in height. So change is a gradual and subtle process. I think rather than concerning ourselves with, am I changing? We should probably focus our energy more on the goal we're trying to achieve. So if your goal is to, let's say read 30 minutes a day, as I kind of gave an example of earlier, it's much more constructive to spend your energy on just that thing rather than distributing it across that thing as well as, am I actually changing? Because as much as that's an important process to introspect, if you do that too much, it might stress you out. It might have the opposite effect. So that's how I would look at that. Second part about why do we get jealous, or does Vihangam Yoga help in preventing jealousy? In my experience, absolutely. I think, as you reconnect with your own being, you start to notice just how much potential you have as an individual. And you start to notice that everyone has that same potential. So when you see someone achieve something, rather than feeling jealous, it really just serves as a reminder that, I have that same capability within me. So rather than being jealous, let me just be inspired by that person. And, you start to understand what you are capable of, and you start to be inspired by what others achieve with that same capability. Because as the yogis have told us, and as the Master of Yoga says, we're all limitless, we're all boundless. So, rather than getting jealous, I've found that you become inspired instead. Because if they can do it, why can't I? And I think because of that, you also become very focused on learning instead. So rather than looking at someone's achievements and then looking at yourself and saying, I'm not great, you look at the other person and say, what do they have that I don't yet? And you might walk over to that person instead of being jealous and say, hey, like I really loved that presentation you gave, or I really loved how you spoke about that experience in your life. How can I do that same thing? So you become very humble in that sense as well. So that's what I'd say to this question. Back to you, Raghuji.
Thank you, Abhinavji. So, from the discussions today, from Abhinavji's talk, I have understood that one has to become subtle and humble. One should not worry, because worrying is what is the responsibility really of the Almighty. Our job is to do prachar, to become more subtle, to be more humble, to be open to influences and learning, to read up. Like Abhinavji had said, he had laid great importance on education and reading, to share experiences with others, and to learn from the master. This is part of what I now realize, and what has opened up for me in this particular session is it's part of the Vihangam Yoga, the VY4S framework. So in management, we use these various frameworks, and the one that I see that is a magic bullet for virtually everything in life is the Vihangam Yoga 4S framework. That's basically Seva, Satsang, Sadhana, and Swadhyay. So Swadhyay is education and learning. Satsang is sharing experiences, being part of a group and learning from the master. Seva is doing it. Seva is putting things into practice. Being selfless. When you practice that, you're able to live that change. You're able to experience things, and you're able to grow as an individual. And finally, there is sadhana, perhaps one of the most important, which binds everything together, which helps us to control our minds and become subtle and open to change and becoming an agent of change. We hope you loved hearing this session as much as we enjoyed it, as much as we enjoyed putting it together. Please do visit us at www.vihangamyog.org. Another website is us.vihangamyog.org. Wonderful website for knowing more about Vihangam Yoga. Please do visit us at these websites and use the contact details to send us an email, give us a call, and we shall respond to you. We shall be only too happy to welcome you, to invite you to this journey of change, to learn from you and to share what we know, to share the learnings from a master. Thank you for having joined us. Thank you, dear speakers, for contributing to the session. May the Sadguru bless us all. Thank you.
सदा फल शांतिमय शांति शांति